Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to break down exactly how Indian law handles people who are, well, left off the dotted line of a legal agreement. We've all heard that contracts are strict, binding documents, right? Kept strictly between the people who actually sign them. But what happens if a deal is meant to benefit you, but your signature isn't actually anywhere on that paper? Do you have any rights at all? Let's explore a very specific and honestly fascinating concept in business law to answer exactly that.
Okay, let's dive right in by establishing the golden rule, the doctrine of privity of contract. Now, in simple everyday terms, this literally means that if your name isn't on the contract, you've got absolutely no legal power to sue over it. You're what the law calls a stranger to a contract. Under general Indian law, a stranger just cannot file a case on a contract. The agreement is considered a completely private bubble between the parties who actually made the promises and signed their names.
But, this strict rule raises a really fascinating question about fairness. Are there any situations where a total stranger actually holds the power to take legal action? Think about it for a second. What if a contract was made specifically to help you, but you weren't the one who signed it? Would it really be fair if you couldn't enforce it? Well, as it turns out, the government totally recognizes that real life is messy, and a rigid rule isn't always the most just approach.
So, here's our agenda for today. We're going to cover 4 key areas. First, the basic legal rule. Second, the trust beneficiary exception. Third, payment acknowledgement. And finally, charges on land.
Let's start with part 1, the basic legal rule. No signature, no suing. We absolutely have to remember the foundation of our legal structure here. Contracts are strictly private, meaning outsiders generally have zero rights to interfere or file lawsuits. This is the baseline we need to keep in our heads. 2 people make a deal, the deal is between them and them alone. If things go south, only those 2 people can take each other to court. No signature, no suing. Simple as that.
But here is where it gets interesting. Part 2. Exception number 1, the trust beneficiary. This is the very first scenario where the government steps in and basically says, wait a minute, this third party actually does have rights. Let's see how this plays out in the real world. So, the rule states that while signing a contract, if an original signer clearly designates a specific person to take over their duties or take charge while they're gone, that designated person suddenly gets legal power. Even though they're technically a stranger or a third party to the contract, they're granted the authority to take action against the other party if any mischievous behavior or mistakes happen. It's like handing over a legal magic wand. The absolute best way to understand this is with an example. Imagine a husband who's a CEO. He signs a big business contract. In that contract, he explicitly mentions that whenever he is absent from the office, his wife is going to take his position. Now, the wife didn't sign this contract, right? She is technically a stranger to it. But because she was explicitly named to take charge, she now has full rights to file a case on the other party if she catches any mistakes or mischievous behavior. So, a wife stepping in for her CEO husband can enforce his business contract to protect their interests, completely bypassing that general rule we talked about earlier. All right, moving on to part 3, exception number 2, payment acknowledgement. Now this one involves the flow of money. It might sound a bit technical at first, but it's actually super straightforward when you track how the cash moves.
This happens when 2 people make a deal, but they legally promise that the actual cash needs to be paid out to a specific person completely outside the room. So, Party A has some special conditions with Party C, and because of that, Party A tells Party B to make the payment directly to Party C. Party C is totally outside the original signing, but the money has their name on it.
Let's break this down step by step so you can see exactly how the law protects that third party. Step 1. Party A and Party B create a contract. Step 2. In that contract, they agree that Party B absolutely must pay a specific amount to Party C. Now, suppose Step 3 happens. Party B breaks the contract and flat out fails to pay Party C. If Party B decides to just pocket the money, Party C doesn't just have to sit there helplessly. According to this exception, Step 4 kicks in. Party C, even though they're a stranger to the original contract between A and B, has the absolute right to file a case directly against Party B for breaking the deal. Pretty neat, right?
And that brings us to part 4, exception number 3, charges on land. This is our last scenario, and it deals specifically with real estate and protecting family members.
In certain specific conditions, if there's a breach of contract regarding land, and the intended beneficiary of that land is a close family member, our notes specifically list a wife, a son, or a daughter, well, they have the power to step in. Even though they are a third party who didn't sign the property agreement, the law completely recognizes their stake in the matter.
This next example brilliantly illustrates how the law steps up to protect a vulnerable third party, like a bride, ensuring she gets the exact property she was promised. Picture a contract between a father and a father-in-law. The contract clearly mentions that the money given by the bride's father must be used to purchase land in the bride's name. Now, if the husband's family takes that money but fails to actually buy the land in the bride's name, that's a massive breach. Under standard rules, only her father could sue, but thanks to this specific exception for land and family beneficiaries, the bride herself, a total stranger to the original contract, can directly file a legal case against her husband's family to enforce the agreement.
So, what's the big takeaway here? While Indian law strongly believes that contracts should stay between the people who signed them, maintaining that core doctrine of privity of contract, these three exceptions prove that justice will ultimately protect those who are meant to benefit. Whether it's a wife taking charge of her husband's business, a third party who's owed money, or a bride promised land, the government provides these crucial loopholes. That way, mischievous actions don't just go unpunished simply because a signature was missing.
This whole fascinating balance between strict rules and necessary loopholes really leaves us wondering, just how deeply does contract law silently protect our everyday lives? It clearly shows that the law isn't just about rigid paperwork. It is fundamentally about ensuring fairness for the intended beneficiaries. So definitely keep these exceptions in mind the next time you see a deal being made, because the people not signing might just have way more power than you think. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.